Hi there and welcome to the very first edition of Up for Discussion, a weekly panel show between Craig Freeman and myself, Steve Chalmers, where we throw up one topic per week and we ask you for your opinion, your discussion. Give us your thoughts via social media, and you've done that throughout the course of this week already. Craig, I'm excited. This week, tonight's topic, who are the players that have changed the game of basketball, both globally and, of course, more locally inside the Big V? We've got a heap of different opinions via social media.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. You can go as small range or as big range as you want with this question. You can keep it into your local association and go as wide as the NBA, Europe, wherever you want. I know you said it's a discussion piece between me and you, but I hope we're actually talking about other people's ideas.
Of course.
More often than our own here.
Absolutely. Tonight we've got a stack of different people's opinions. They've jumped on social media, used the hashtag BigV19, replied to a bunch of our social media graphics. So we thank you. We hope that you continue to do so throughout season 2019. And look, I'm going to start it off. Who are the players that have changed the game of basketball? I'm going to start globally. I think Wilt Chamberlain from the NBA was massive in the early stages. Obviously, this is before my time.
Really?
So I've gone through some of the history books to see what Wilt has done. But going towards the more recent factor, and certainly during my time where I can actually see how basketball has evolved, Shaquille O'Neal. The times where he won multiple championships with the LA Lakers, obviously did that alongside Kobe Bryant. But I think Shaq was a massive influence in the game of basketball, really put that big man and that big dominant player on the map. And was an absolute must in terms of winning championships in future years, and nowadays even more recent. It's happening right here, right now. I think it was only a few years ago when Steph Curry sort of stamped his authority on the NBA. And I'm using the NBA a little bit. They're even talking about four-pointers, bringing in four-pointers into the game of basketball these days, and that's solely, in my opinion, that's solely on Steph Curry's ability to shoot the three-pointer that damn well.
Anyone you think can shoot a four-pointer in the Big V?
Well, there'd be plenty of players that can shoot a four-pointer in the Big V, but we've seen players do it in the Big Three. I think that's the first time we've ever seen a four-pointer. Maybe the Harlem Globetrotters had the four-point shot first and foremost, but certainly that's my guys in the NBA or globally. There's certainly been some female players who have changed the game, but I'm going to stick to that more so in the Big V. Is there anyone globally that sort of you've earmarked over the past?
You touched on Steph Curry, who's definitely revolutionised the game. Touching on the NBA, I don't think we ever get to Steph Curry and the Warriors unless we go through Steve Nash and the 7 seconds and or less Suns. Changed the way the game was played. A lot of three-pointers. They played a lot faster than anyone has in the past. And you really see that influence all around the world now. Big V teams now are playing so much faster than they did 10 years ago. Probably a lot more teams hunting the three-point shot. I think it's just been a big positive effect on basketball. And then, even a player like today, Liz Cambage, is a monster inside. But you see that she still went to the effort to develop a three-point shot. Knocks down a bunch of threes. We saw her 52-point game during the season. She knocked down a couple of threes, a lot of elbow jumpers. Just the players with size, but really having to have diversity in the league, and we're seeing that more and more across Big V as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking more locally towards our shores, in the Big V, to me, Ivan Platnick's arrival and emergence in the system was huge for the competition. Just that night in, night out dominance. He found a way to get 20 and 10, 25 and 12 every night without really having, to my eye, to really raise a thumb. Like a fingernail was, and bank shot, bang in, and that changed the way the competition worked. And then also Matt Snow's understanding of the game came in as a 15-year-old, and it was well published last season. Just his IQ and the fact that he doesn't need to put points up. It's a guard's role in years gone by was you must score, and sometimes even in today's game, it's guards, you got to score the ball. But the fact that he can put up 0 points and have a massive effect on a game of basketball, I think that's changed Big V for the better. Moving on to the women's side, I think during the time of Colleen Planeta and Amber Heggie, that sort of era really put the female game on the map in more recent terms. They both changed the game for the better as clubs pretty much used that as the barometer and the benchmark in terms of getting international talent. They sort of used that as the benchmark, as I mentioned, and they can find these, future players and go, they're what is going to make my club successful because they are going to be the next Colleen Plennett or the next Amber Heggie, and they've gone on to bigger and better things.
I think on the local front, I know we're talking about players here, but touching on a team that had a lot of players go through the system, I think Southern Peninsula have shown that you can have a lot of young players out there and still be super competitive. We saw probably their best player last year might have been Jazz Shelley, 18, 17, and got them all the way through to the finals. I think coaches are more and more open to youth nowadays, are following a player like that, leading the way, finishing All-Star 5, taking their team to the finals.
Massively. Just that young emergence of talent. You can start in a system and you can find yourself not only individually bettering your skills, but as a team. And it just continues to come through. Diamond Valley rings a bell as another youth emergence of talent. Southern Peninsula, as you mentioned, especially on the women's side. Hey, let's take a look at what you guys had to say. There was an abundance of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook messages that came through, comments. As I said at the top of the show, we thank you very much for what you had to say. Over on Twitter, Stephen Dowling made a really good one, and it was via the European side of things, which you did make a mention of early in the piece. Arvidas Sabonis.
Yeah, father of Domantas Sabonis, who's currently playing in the NBA. This dude was a machine, great passer, could score inside, never looked like a good athlete. Very similar to the way Ivan actually tore up the league for a while. Doesn't look like he was trying, didn't look like he was exuding too much effort out there, or even looked like the best athlete, but managed to get the job done. 7'3" or 4", and really came into the NBA as I think it was sub 30 when he came into the NBA, and I think he ended up being, when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, he was the tallest player ever to be inducted when he was inducted there. Barnaby over Twitter said Pete Maravich. I thought that was a nice Pistol
one.
Pete.
Pistol Pete.
And then we actually got a couple of nominations for the following player, Bobby Cunningham.
There was a lot of comments that came in and said Bobby Cunningham changed the game. Oliver Reed over on Twitter said Bobby Cunningham changed the game as statisticians could sit with a cup of tea when he was on the court. Really liked that comment. Facebook, Rodney Batten said Bobby Cunningham proved a guy from Division 3 college can dominate the Big V. And over on Instagram, Paul Langford jumped on and said Bobby Cunningham as well. So certainly lots of votes coming in for BC. Justin Nelson, old mate, Justin jumped on Twitter.
Can't get away from him.
Can't get away from any Big V circles. Actually made a really good point.
Yeah, he said Stacey Barr, game changer in Big V. Aggressive young player who didn't fear the older, more experienced players. Gets touched on what we were just talking about before. Show that talent is talent no matter what your age is, and really pave the way for young players going into Big V in the future.
And over on Facebook, James Beardsmore said, in terms of rule changes, this is going back a little bit, George Mikan and Wilt would have to be right up there. Imagine basketball with no goaltending rule. They simply did change the game, didn't they? They forced certain rule changes, and I guess we haven't touched on the male GOAT, MJ. Was it him and his era that sort of removed or introduced the hand checking rules?
Yeah, a little bit, maybe too easy to score on the perimeter, but also once defense has got a bit smarter, I guess, in the later 90s, more so through the 2000s, the handshaking wasn't required as much either.
This one is not only global, this is close to home. He's come through the Big V. This is everything in between. Justin McLeod has jumped on Facebook and said, Ben Simmons is showing that you just don't need a jump shot, which I find that's really interesting. I'm sure Ben will develop a jump shot over time, but in his first couple of years in the NBA, he has revolutionised the league.
Does he still need a jump shot though?
Potentially. I'm thinking the way you've answered that, you're saying yes, but there you go. Hey, Damien Pace has jumped on, said Jared Moss changed the game. Over on Instagram, Club Saints has had a nice list of McKinnon players or ex-McKinnon players. Axel Dench, Dylan Stith, Ivan Platnick and Sam Eyre. Brad Flack said the Ringwood three-peat was a pretty game-changing achievement. So that's not just one
nice
player.
Answer.
That's coaching staff, a whole list. Goes to show that depth and also retention is key in the Big V.
There's one down here that I really like, Tyler Harris saying Calvin Henry. King Henry, we know the Mildura Mayor. Showed that you can have elite Big V talent at any division level and play really well for your local area.
Very much so. Ryan Lawrence has said Brendan Truella. The Jungle Beast has said Bolback, so that's certainly very much more recent times. Haley D has said Dylan Stith and Katie Blueser. I think that may be due to some sort of relationship game changer over at McKinnon. You mentioned Tyler Harris with Calvin Henry. That was a very good one. Jade Kirk has said Lalani Siamoa, hashtag Polynesian. So may have just brought that side into the game of Big V. Yusuf Kwafau has said Sadal Threat Jr. was a monster. That was a really good comment as well. And finally, Jay Allen has mentioned Brad Kelleher. So there's a bunch of players there, both globally and both locally in the Big V, who are very much deserved nominations or opinionated discussion members.
Yeah, really well branching number of players there as well. We've seen young athletic players, we've seen older players who are still able to impact the game. Players that have only played for a couple of season imports, local players. Great to see the spread, and everyone's left a little fingerprint on Big V.
Absolutely. So that's up for discussion, done for the first time. Stay tuned to Big V Socials as we give you next week's topic on Up for Discussion. We hope to have your opinions and your comments throughout socials for us to talk about next week.